So this region's question here is asking us to use specifically the quadratic formula to solve the quadratic equation 6x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals 0. Okay. Now, one other super important thing is it's asking us to express that in simplest radical form. Okay. Now, first thing I should be doing, if I don't have it memorized yet, is going to my reference sheet and finding that quadratic formula, which is right here. Okay. So you don't need to memorize the quadratic formula. Okay. What you do need to know is how to use it. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. Now, the first time you see the quadratic formula, it can definitely look intimidating, but the key here is that it really is like a recipe. Okay, is I've got some B's in there, I've got some A's and a little bit of C. That's all I need to figure out what X is. But the question is, what exactly are A, B, and C? Now, if we actually look at the reference sheet here, I'll notice AX squared plus BX plus C. So A, B, and C are the coefficients of the terms in my equation here. Now, the biggest thing here, the biggest trap to watch out for is that it must equal 0. If it doesn't equal 0, you have to do a little bit of algebra to force it to equal 0, and then you can go ahead and use the quadratic formula. But it's already the case here, so I just got to identify A here is the coefficient of the x squared term, that's 6. B is the coefficient of the x term, that's 2. And C is the constant term here, which is negative 1. Now I'm going to take the A, the B, and the C values and carefully substitute them into the right spots in my quadratic equation here. Okay, so first up, x equals, that negative is always there. Okay, make sure you don't lose that negative. Okay, B is 2. Now plus or minus, that again is always here, the square root of B again. B again, we said was 2. Okay, don't forget, I need to square that as well. Minus that 4 is always there. Now AC. Okay, so A in this case was 6. Now this part here, I always like to drop these two into parentheses to indicate that I'm multiplying them. And also if there are negatives, like with the C here, it's just a way for me to make sure I don't make any mistakes anyway. Okay, now on the denominator, I've got 2. A is 6. So the first step with the quadratic formula is the most important step. And it's actually good practice just to kind of double check everything and make sure that you didn't make any mistakes here, right? So my B's 2, 2, my A 6, 6, my C negative 1. Okay. Now, if it just asks for a decimal, I'd be able to throw this thing into a calculator just as is and get my answer as a decimal. But since it's asking for simplest radical form, I actually want to do a little bit of math here in order to make sure I get full credit. Okay, so really all I have to do is figure out how to simplify this square root over here. Okay, so I've got this square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 1. Now you could actually put this whole thing in the calculator. Okay, but I'm just going to do the simplifying here. 2 squared is 4 minus, I've got 4 times 6 is 24, multiplied by negative 1. So this is actually going to turn into plus 24, which is the square root of 28. Okay. Now, the thing here is when it talks about simplest radical form is I do have to simplify this by looking for factors that are perfect squares. So I can write 28 as 4 times 7, which means I can simplify this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. Square root of 4 is 2 root 7. Is how I simplify that radical portion. Okay, so I'm going to take this guy and change this to that. Okay, so this here turns into x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 7 all divided by 12. Now, if I wanted to simplify this a little bit more, okay, I could technically divide the top, the numerator, and the bottom, the denominator, by 2. Okay, right? Notice I actually had the 2 here and 2's here. So this here I could simplify just a little bit more into -1 plus or minus the square root of 7 all over 6. Now, if I wanted to split this up into my two roots, remember I've got a positive root and a negative root. It's -1 plus root 7 over 6 and -1 minus root 7 over 6. Now, really the quadratic formula is just attention to detail. And the one piece added in that you may have to practice is just this work here of simplifying a square root. Okay. But this here is my full exact answer.